What's up, everybody? This is Chris Sarad bringing another edition of the Car Concierge Show, the show that helps with the buying, selling, maintaining, and repairing of your vehicles. On today's show, we're going to head over to California and have a conversation about EV vehicles as we check out a story about a Tesla Cybertruck that has crashed and burst into flames. We're also going to head over to China and talk about Volkswagen and its controversial, not controversial, but its decision to move its factories out of a very particular region of China, Jiangxing, where it is known for many a moon that people are over there working and not getting paid for it. And last but not least, we're going to head over to Detroit and check out a story about how the automotive industry is trying to, or think that the 25% tariffs that the incoming President Donald Trump is putting out is going to affect the auto industry. First up, let's check out this story out of California about a Tesla Cybertruck that has crashed and burned, and a couple people have lost their lives. Let's check it out.
ABC 7 News reporter
in the East Bay, sadly, 3 people dead, another hospitalized after a fiery crash this morning in Piedmont.
Friends have identified the victims as Piedmont High School graduates who were sophomores in college. ABC 7 News reporter Ansar Hassan is live with the very latest on this tragedy. Ansar.
Kristen and Larry, good afternoon. You can see friends have come by, drop off flowers, pay their respects. Police say they are still very early in the investigation, but you can see this is a very wide road, and they point out they don't know how fast the car was going, but that speed was likely a factor.
We're just devastated. I know the family whose son is in the hospital right now, and I know the other families.
Eileen DeSoto was one of the many who dropped off flowers at the crash site. Early Wednesday morning, 3 young people died when their Tesla truck crashed into a wall at Hampton Road and King Avenue in Piedmont. DeSoto identified the victims as 2 young men and 1 young woman. A 4th person was pulled out of the truck by a friend in another car.
I know that he's had surgery. He's in recovery. He has some burns. He is under sedation right now. So we're hoping that he recovers.
Sandy Martin was their middle school teacher. Family friends confirmed all 4 were Piedmont High School graduates who are currently sophomores in college.
They're smart kids. They're good kids. They were also kids that were really supportive of all their friends.
Speed was a factor.
Piedmont Police Chief Jeremy Bowers says just after 3 a.m., the Tesla truck jumped the curb, struck a cement wall, and got wedged between the wall and a tree. He says part of the investigation will be to determine if drugs or alcohol were involved. Officials add at this time, there are no indications that the truck had mechanical issues, although they are still trying to determine how the truck caught fire.
Due to the quick nature of being able to suppress the fire, we don't think the main lithium batteries of the car were on fire, but that's going to be determined as part of the investigation.
Officials have yet to release any information about the 4 victims, 4 young people known for their generosity.
This shouldn't happen to any kids. When you know them, it just makes it worse.
I spoke to some of the friends who came out to pay their respects. They're planning a vigil sometime over the next few days. Live in Piedmont, Ansar Hassan, ABC 7 News.
Very sad stuff. Really sad stuff. Our hearts go out to those children and their families. It's just a horrible thing. And my point of talking about this was really, it being the Tesla Cybertruck. I'm gonna kind of wait till we get a little bit more information. But my question is, why did it catch on fire? I mean, accidents happen. These vehicles are supposed to be extremely safe. You hit a wall in a standard vehicle, you probably would survive. Of course, they said speed was a factor. They don't know if it was alcohol or drugs were involved. So it could be a drunken driving situation. You know how we feel about that. But we just don't know. So it's not a lot of information to, go on some tangent about, drinking and driving, and go on some tangent about Tesla Cybertrucks being trash and stuff like that. But what I will say is that, hitting a wall, it's just sad that this happened. And my whole thing is the whole fire situation. I just don't, I know I talked about a couple weeks ago, we talked about how during that tropical storm that went over us not that long ago, or was, went over parts of Florida and all that kind of stuff. They talked a lot about how the EV vehicles were catching fire because of the flooding. The water underneath the EV vehicles were catching fire. So, there's a lot of things about these EV vehicles that we just don't know, and one of the things is that they're pretty much ran completely off of battery power. So these systems, they fray, they catch fire, they spark. So we know that because of the whole situation with the tropical storm and all of the EV vehicles that just up and burst into flames at people's homes just because they were getting wet underneath them. And it's just one of those things where I always talk about how research and development is really important in these vehicles, and not as much research and development is being done on these vehicles to the point where we'll know why this vehicle caught on fire. We'd have that information. Now, mind you, it's a Tesla, so it's got cameras all over it. So maybe the cameras is going to tell a story for us. They should be able to download that information. But it's just one of those things where I always talk about how research development is extremely important, and I really want to understand why the vehicle caught fire. I don't know if these young people would have died if it wasn't for the fire. But standardly, what I would say is that, I work in collisions, so I see a lot of vehicles that have been destroyed and people walked away. I've seen a lot of incidents where there have been drunk drivers driving these vehicles and crashing and destroying the vehicles, and they walk away. More cases than not, people who get hurt are the people who are not driving or causing the problems. So that's just, nature, I guess. But what I'm saying is that, I find myself to be a pretty decent expert in the collision industry, and, speed being a side factor that I don't know fully about. Standardly, a vehicle running into a wall and crashing, that's not, it's so hard to say. It's just so many factors in these vehicles. But my whole thing in this story, and so I'm going to get up out of here, my whole thing is that it's got to be a lot more investigation, got to be a lot more research and development to find out, why this vehicle caught fire for me. And, in the long run, in the future, is this going to be a situation that these vehicles catch on fire when they're in minor accidents again? Now, mind you, it's not a minor accident. Looks pretty serious. Speed was a factor. I'm not sure. But what I just want you guys to understand and what you think about is that if you're buying these vehicles, make sure that, you're very, very researchful. Very adamant that you have as much knowledge about these vehicles as you can, because they're just getting thrown out there. Let's face it, they getting thrown out there, very little research and development, thrown under your lap. And as I always say, do not buy that car when it comes out that first year, because it's going to be a piece of junk and you're going to be at the dealership all the time getting it fixed. Alright, so let's head over to the next story. So we've talked a lot about Volkswagen lately. They've been making a lot of moves, a lot of layoffs, a lot of factory closings. And recently they decided, which was probably a smart move, save them some money, is decided they were going to get rid of some factories they have in China. Now this is a very interesting story, because these factories in China, they're in a very specific place in China, a very specific region. And this region is pretty known for, or thought to be known for, using child labor, using slave labor. And the idea is, or the thought is that this is part of the reason that you get these cheap products from China, because there's areas or regions like this in China that you can get cheap products from, because the people who are making them ain't getting paid. They're getting whips and buckets. So we're going to chat a quick story about Volkswagen decided to pull its plants out of this region in China, and we'll talk about it after that.
Volkswagen says it is selling its controversial factory in China's western Xinjiang region. The German car maker has been under pressure to shut its joint venture in the region. It's where Beijing is accused of carrying out human rights violations against the Uyghur Muslim minority. From Beijing, here's Stephen McDonnell.
This is significant because human rights groups had long been criticising VW for having a factory there. Now, why is that? Because there are these allegations of the mass incarceration of ethnic Uyghurs. Also allegations of the use of forced labour. Now, while groups had been monitoring that factory being run by VW in Xinjiang, Volkswagen says it was never given any evidence that forced labour was used in connection to its enterprise. Interesting though, it's after all these years of sort of sticking it out and copping all this criticism that it's pulling out now. One thing to consider is that it's struggling here in terms of sales and looking for new directions, and at least it would enable VW to sort of draw a line under it and to be able to sort of diffuse the criticism internationally. How is the deal going to work? Well, VW and its Chinese partner are going to divest themselves, sell the entire operation to a Shanghai company, a Shanghai government-owned company, which will buy up the factory and also the test tracks and also employ all of the staff there. VW...
See, and we talked about this maybe last week, or we talked about how, or I said that the governments has so much sway when it comes to China and its automotive industry that it helps it and hurts it to some degree. Now think about this: if they're about to sell this factory that they've made Volkswagens in for who knows how long to the Chinese government, or a business that is helped or run by the Chinese government, what you think they're gonna do with it? They're gonna just turn around and do exactly what Volkswagen was doing in this factory and help out their EV industry, help out their automotive industry. This is going to help China's EV massive growth more than anything else. But I mean, the fact is that Volkswagen has to cut costs. So, can't they at this point? They're going to cut costs and they're going to be able to save face to some degree.
Wants to have a big presence in this country. It really wants to get its sales going again, and so I suppose it will be hoping by doing this deal, maintaining the factory, it can then sort of not lose any reputational damage here, cauterize the criticism overseas, and get back into making cars, like especially hybrids and electric vehicles, which is what it needs to do to secure its future in China.
All right, so yeah, that's it's, for me, and of course it blends into our last story, but it's about the tariff situation. This is twofold, and because what this is going to do, of course, is going to help Volkswagen cut the fat, as it were, and probably that factory in Jiangcheng is probably the one factory with the lowest probably overhead that they had, let's face it. But it's in a region where the whole region is considered that it's a lot of slave labor ideas, and most of they say a lot of the Temu stuff comes from that area and stuff like that. But there's no concrete evidence of this, but there is. But what we're saying is that this is them getting out of this area proves that the world, to some degree, is trying to move away from all these things that allowed China to sell us these products at such cheap prices. Because let's think about it. This is the area where they get a lot of labor that they're not paying extreme amounts of money for. So all the products that come out of that area can be extremely cheap because you're not paying anybody to make them, not paying anybody to to really sell them, you probably just throwing them on Temu and getting them things off. And we over here buying them like crazy because they so cheap. But the fact is that the world's trying to get away from that. The world's trying to get away from all of that slave labor. They said they were monitoring the factory, but who knows? Volkswagen still got up out of there. So what you might see, what might happen is that there will be to some degree, companies in America are going to sweepingly not allow products to come from this area under the guise that they're using slave labor to create these products. And of course what that's going to do is not allow the American people to buy those products, which is going to kind of force them to buy products here. And that's ultimately the goal, is to make America great again by making sure that Americans are buying products from other Americans. And that's the goal. So, kudos to Volkswagen for removing their factory from over there. We expect that, I think I want to say Jaguar might have had a factory over there too that they got out of. But there was a lot of American companies and factories are in that area. I'm not even sure where Tesla's factory is either, but there's a lot of American factories in that area, and we just don't know about it. I might know about a couple of them, but the idea is that it's extremely cheap to make products over there because, you know what I'm saying, you ain't paying the people nothing. That's what I'm saying. It goes well in business, but it doesn't go well when it comes to treating people well. So let's face it, Volkswagen getting out of there is great. Probably going to see some other American companies that have factories or supply chains that come out of there to stop, because there's going to be more eyes on things that are coming out of that region. So they don't want to have the scrutiny that they would receive because they're still, using products or using people from that area. So it's going to have a big effect on, the stuff that we're getting from China and the cost of it or lack thereof, and the idea that we're trying our best to get back to Americans buying from America. So, all right, last story, my friends, and I'm gonna let y'all get up out of here. So, of course, Trump has decided, even before, he's doing all kinds of things right now. One of the things he did was that he was informing people that he is going to impose pretty much a 25% tariff on products coming out of Canada and Mexico and all these other places. And the question is that, of course, for the Car Concierge Show, the question is, how is this going to affect the auto industry? So let's check out the story, and then we'll talk about it after that.
Okay, now to the tariff tensions being felt here in Metro Detroit after an announcement from President-elect Trump. It's a move that could send prices skyrocketing for many industries, including the auto industry.
Trump made the announcement yesterday on social media. He says he plans to impose a 25% tariff on goods imported from Canada and Mexico and a 10% tariff on goods imported from China.
Tariffs are essentially a tax that's paid by importers, and the costs are typically passed along to the consumer by raising the price on the products.
7 News Detroit's Whitney Burney is speaking with an auto customer, an auto industry expert, and an auto dealer about what these tariffs could mean for the industry.
Car dealers say if those tariffs take effect, currently as promised, 25% on Canada and Mexico and 10% on China, we will definitely see the difference in ticket prices here in the United States. The question is, how big of an impact are we talking? Looking for a new set of wheels.
I personally like BMWs, so I'm looking around for them. I found one over there, found a few over there.
Tony Attia is on the hunt for the best price.
I'm looking to find something that's like not too overpriced, kind of like in like the 30s, 40s kind of range.
A hunt that could be more challenging in the new year, as President-elect Donald Trump is promising to impose tariffs on nations that build and export many critical auto parts to the U.S.
It is kind of scary So that's why I'm trying to look for one right now, just to try and lock in on one, low miles and everything with all that stuff, so I can get one quickly before all that stuff goes up.
Trump says the proposed 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada and the 10% tariff on China is in an effort to pressure those countries to slow the flow of drugs and illegal immigration. But experts say it'll result in higher costs being passed to you, the consumer.
Automakers from Europe, from Japan, from Korea, from Mexico are all going to be impacted by this, and the effect will be immediate. Now, the question is Trump really going to do this, or is this a negotiating tactic of his?
Auto expert John McElroy says one of the first places customers would see that impact is right here at local dealerships.
We're in a global car industry at this point, so every one of these cars has some piece or all of it produced outside of the country.
Dealers say this is the first time they've seen proposed tariffs on this scale.
We don't know what the final results are going to be when it's all said and done, so I'm not going to panic, and I'm kind of hoping that no one else panics either.
But if you're in the market for a car now, there are still options as end-of-the-year deals ramp up.
Consider leasing. Leasing gives people the opportunity, in most cases, to have a lower payment now with the option of purchasing that vehicle that they're leasing 2 or 3 years down the road. I'm confident that we're going to be in an upswing. I think the bigger concern is what happens with electric vehicles and the potential of the tax credit going away.
In Southfield, Whitney Burney, 7 News Detroit.
All right, guys. Great story. You know, of course, it's going to be a wait-and-see situation. Trump is a businessman, and you know he's put out these statements before he's even president. So, you know, they haven't gone into effect yet. So this could be a little bit of smoke and mirrors to try to get these companies to do what he wants them to do. And I'm here for it. I'm here for it because the whole thing is that, you know, our automakers are suffering too much as it is to have to try to worry about stuff coming from overseas and stuff like that. I mean, I understand that there's a lot of parts in these vehicles that are from overseas, and that's the problem. That's part of the major problem, is that we rely so much on overseas for these parts because they're cheap, because you know we don't have to have people over here making them because it costs more for the factories here to make these things. That's the problem. That is the problem. We outsource so much of our world to overseas that it caused us to lose a big chunk of what made us great and what made us have so many things that created such wealth here. We gave it away. We gave all that away. We gave all that opportunity away to overseas to the point where we can't live without them. And now we have to find a point where we're living without them. We have to galvanize together and make sure that we understand that people need certain things, and if we're here in America and we can make them in America, we should be able to make them at a point, at a price that the people here in America can enjoy them and feel confident and rest assured in paying a certain price for these things, whereas not having to get these things from overseas at an extremely cheaper price. Because let's face it, as the last story told us, cheap things coming from China are probably going to come to some kind of slowdown, some kind of halt to some degree once they start really cracking down on the Jiangxing region in China, because that is the major hub for a lot of the cheap stuff that we're getting. So if they put a kibosh on that, then it's going to be turned into a situation that where most of the stuff that we get overseas is going to be very, very little bit less or about the same price as stuff that you get here. And that's what we want. We want competition. It hasn't been a competition in an extremely long time. China and all these other countries have been shipping things in here at super duper low prices and killing the American market. And we have to stop that. We have to put a complete stop to all these other countries shipping in things and not allowing the American people who make these things to make money, because we like China and buying that factory over there so they can start making more EVs or doing whatever they want in that factory that's already built. We need to do that here. We need to say, hey, well, if we can't get these parts from that factory in China for the low, why don't we build a factory here so we can have some people, our people, make these parts for us? If we can, find a way to keep them at a good price so the price is comparable to anything that we would get overseas, that would be a great, fantastic start. Because that's what we need, man. We're losing jobs, we're losing opportunity, and the way to get those jobs and opportunity back is to take back all of the things that we're importing and get them from here. That is the easiest and quickest way for us to get back to where we were, to become the industry country that we used to be, the country that made everything in-house, that had factories everywhere. Where when we was in war times, we had factories that had to be filled, and who filled them? Our beautiful women. That's what I'm talking about. We ain't got that no more. Growing up as a kid, I would just going to school, we would drive past maybe like 3 or 4 factories. A semi-truck factory, a Ford factory. When I went to college, there was a Ford factory right down the street. I worked at an Otis elevator factory. These places were the mainstays for us. They made us. These people that worked in these factories were getting paid super duper. The people in that Otis elevator factory were getting paid majorly. They all had homes. They all had the nicest cars. All their kids were doing fantastically. You know what happened to that area when Otis elevator went? When Otis elevator left, that place went to hell. Crime, drugs. It's not even close to being the place it was. And that's true of a lot of American cities. True of a lot of American places. These factories die out. They get all these layoffs. The people have to leave because they don't have the skills to get a job that pays as well as that factory job where they are. And then depression sets in, drug use, criminality. It has destroyed the very fabric of the American world, is that we've allowed ourselves to depend so much on overseas. So we have to get it back, and I think the tariff thing is probably going to be the best way to handle it right now. All right, my friends, I'm going to let y'all get on up out of here. As always, it's fantastic for you guys to tune in. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Tomorrow is Turkey Day. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Happy holidays to you and yours. And I'm going to say that, because hearing about some deaths, so I wanted to say really quickly, please, if you can, take this time of year to reach out and make up to all those family members that you're not talking to or you have a problem with, because life is fast. I heard earlier about a young lady that was only 39 years old who died, and she was very interesting young lady. Gave me a lot of great entertainment. So shout out to her, Trindad T. Shout out to her, and just if you can, use these holidays to make amends with family, reach out to family, and make sure that the last thing that you say to somebody before they pass or before you pass is not the wrong thing. All right, I'm Chris Surratt. Thanks for tuning in. Happy Turkey Day, and I'm out. Peace.